What are the elements that define a truly great MCU sidekick? Do you have to be an exceptional man in the chair? Do you have to go on to become your own main hero in a later project? Do you have to be an expert scene stealer in every appearance? There's a lot of different criteria. And the MCU has mostly done a fantastic job in giving us memorable, valuable sidekicks to the main heroes, but just who do you think is the strongest one? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about today, so let's get into the ranking of strongest MCU sidekicks right now. I'm sure that Dane Whitman will go on to do a bunch of interesting things in the future of the MCU, but his first appearance in the Eternals regulated him to a role of lackluster sidekick. I really didn't dislike him in Eternals, I promise, but it's just that the movie already had too many characters to introduce for his introduction to truly mean anything. Yes, I completely understand that this was the groundwork for the character and it will help with whenever he shows up next, but it all just felt both underdeveloped and shoehorned into an already overstuffed plot. And yes, I do count him as a sidekick in this movie. The first scene where they're attacked by the Deviant before Icarus shows up, Dane is involved in trying to help in any way he can. Of course, there's not much he can do when he's just a normal, fleshy human, and Cersei and Sprite are powerful heroes, but bless his heart, he tries his best. And then, when Cersei is snatched up in front of him at the end of the movie, he runs to the Ebony Blade to try to help. So yes, he's a sidekick who didn't do much in the movie, but will go on to do much bigger things, presumably with two famous blades in his life helping him out. Maria Hill doesn't get enough credit for how awesome she is. She basically acts like Nick Fury's second-in-command and is always around to kick butt when needed or break Captain America and his friends out of a jam when necessary. But although she's a great character, she ranks low on this list. I'm hoping her appearance in the upcoming Secret Invasion will do more for her character because right now she's missing a big standout moment. In the comics, she became the S.H.I.E.L.D. director and was integral to a lot of important stories. But the MCU hasn't really gone that route with her character. She's always working for Nick Fury, and although she probably is integral to whatever Fury has been doing up in space, it's just not something we've seen yet. And I know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is slowly erasing from canon, but the fact that a revived Coulson, then a bunch of other characters became S.H.I.E.L.D. director while Maria Hill went off to work for Stark Industries for a bit was a missed opportunity for Hill. Nick Fury has always been a side character in all his appearances, so Hill has basically been the sidekick to the side character, and that's just not a great spot to be in. Maria Rambeau was Carol Danvers' best friend, and her impressive flight skills came in handy during the final battle of Captain Marvel. She was loyal, intelligent, and you can trust her with your life, but I think two things sort of stop her from ranking high on this list of strong sidekicks. For one, her story arc is now mostly done. Since Captain Marvel was a 90s set adventure, we know what happens in the future, and unfortunately, Maria is no longer with us. We know she did great things though, like found S.W.O.R.D., and although S.W.O.R.D. was one of the big bads of WandaVision, which begs the question of whether they should have been founded at all, I'm hopeful that Maria's daughter, Monica, will help Nick Fury revamp S.W.O.R.D. to have more extraterrestrial focus in space. And that brings me to the second reason she's ranked a little low on this list. Monica really overshadows her. Through the events of WandaVision, we see Monica get her own superpowers, which is going to make her incredibly strong once she masters them. That's hard to compete with in terms of strength. And no, I'm not discounting the fact that Maria is a top-notch fighter pilot, but in the long run, that sort of pales in comparison to legit superpowers. So Maria is a great friend and ally, but not a super strong sidekick compared to the others on this list. Maybe before Thor Ragnarok, I would have said the Warriors 3 were some of the strongest sidekicks around. They were vital to both Thor and Thor the Dark World, and each of them brought something unique to the table. They're like a sidekick mini-group who could kick a lot of butt. That is, unless Hela shows up. Thor Ragnarok was seen as a soft reboot for the Thor character. Not only did he lose his hammer, his father, and his hair, while simultaneously finding a brand new sense of humor, but the supporting cast was also revitalized. To show how serious Hela was as a villain, the movie had her dispatch 2 out of 3 of the Warriors 3 in the blink of an eye, and then swiftly moved to take out the third member in one fell swoop. Like, at least give Volstagg and Fandral some lines or a mini fight or something. There was a way to shoot that scene to still be shocking, but not undermine the Warriors 3 and everything we knew about them, right? Rhodey and his War Machine persona was the MCU's first superhero sidekick. Obviously, the journey has been on Tony Stark, and the movies are called Iron Man and rightfully focus on our favorite genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, but Rhodey has always been right next to him, helping out and putting up with Tony's sarcasm. He's always been a fascinating character to me in the MCU, and even though Iron Man 2 isn't the best MCU film by any means, it was nice to see Rhodey step up, don the War Machine armor, and help stop Whiplash. From there, he got to keep the armor and continue being a major asset to the US government. I just love how the War Machine suit is a pretty basic Iron Man suit, but just loaded up with tons of guns, bombs, and more guns. It seems clunkier than the sleekness of Tony Stark's suit, but also can do a lot of damage. Rhodey is a strong sidekick because he'll blow up whatever is in your path. You know, sort of like a war machine. The name fits. But I have Rhodey relatively low on this list for a few reasons. For one, again, the suit doesn't seem as powerful as it should be given what we've seen Iron Man suits do. And two, now that Tony's gone, what exactly will happen to the War Machine armor? I know we're getting Armor Wars starring Rhodey in the near future, but like, if Rhodey's suit breaks down, who's gonna repair it for him? When your whole superhero persona is dependent on your tech genius friend creating free upgrades for you, then I think you have a problem. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was an awesome Phase 4 origin story, and I can't wait to see Shang-Chi have a long future in the MCU going forward. But of course, right next to him during all his Ten Rings father drama was his best friend Katy. Now here's the thing I really like about Katy. With the hilarious Awkwafina in the role, Katy could have easily just been comic relief in the same vein as Darcy was in Thor the Dark World. But the Legend of the Ten Rings really made it a point to make Katy a valuable part of the team. Not only was she an expert driver that got the group to Ta Lo, but once there she decided she didn't want to just sit and do nothing. No, she started training to become an archer in order to help out in the final fight. And sure, she practiced archery for like a few days and won't be challenging Clint Barton or Kate Bishop anytime soon, but she learned enough to turn the tides in the final battle. In fact, she apparently was so helpful that when Wong came knocking at the end of the film, he made it a point to recruit both Shang-Chi and Katy for the Avengers. Not too bad. You know, you could really argue that Scott Lang got incredibly lucky falling into the Ant-Man gig. The first movie establishes that Hope Van Dyne is more experienced, battle-ready, and has the full awareness of the situation to pull off that heist in Ant-Man, but it's only Hank's fear of losing his daughter to the quantum realm like her mother that drove him to recruit an outsider to wear the suit instead. And the second movie wisely gives Wasp a proper starring role and makes it a true two-hander. But the reason Wasp lands at the middle of this list is because she really should have been a lead the whole time. Unlike other entries on this list who started off as sidekicks and then grew to be their own heroes capable of carrying a whole franchise, Wasp was mostly fully developed from the start. She never should have been a sidekick to Scott in that first movie and had to wait for her dad to come around and change his mind about making a suit for her. So I think her designation as a sidekick is a bit of a weird one. So in the middle she goes. Alright, in terms of pure strength, Ned should probably rank at the bottom of this list. He's not a superhero or a supervillain yet who assists Peter in any final fight by suiting up and throwing punches, and yet Ned is still one of the best sidekicks in the MCU. First off, he's incredibly valuable because he is the one who coined the term man in the chair in the MCU that we all use frequently now. He put a name to the MCU characters who generally sit back and let the main hero fight while they help out on some other minor problems, so let's not discount that accomplishment. But for a street-level hero, Ned is a great ally. He is a wizard with his computer skills, able to hack into Iron Man suits and change certain protocols, as well as provide Peter with vital car information when needed. And I said he was a wizard just a second ago, and guess what? I mean that literally. In No Way Home, Ned not only found out how to use the sling ring almost by accident, which is amazing given how much trouble that was for Doctor Strange, but he was also the one who united the two past versions of Spider-Man. That alone makes him one of the best sidekicks around. I think the relationship that Clint Barton was able to build with Kate Bishop throughout the course of the Hawkeye TV show was beautiful to watch. On one side, you have an eager, slightly cocky young archer who idolizes Clint above any other Avenger that suddenly finds herself in way over her head to the point where Clint needs to protect her. On the other side, you have Clint, who's been grieving Natasha's endgame sacrifice and struggling to reckon with his Ronin past. Both of them help each other in vital ways, and Kate eventually reaches a point where she's ready to take over the Hawkeye mantle. Strength-wise, Kate may be just as strong as Hawkeye is, meaning she'll just be someone who's super good at archery and some some people may write that off. But her strength, much like Clint's, comes from the way she inspires other people. She'll become a vital part of any team, and it all started with being Hawkeye's sidekick and eventual partner. It will be interesting to see where Kate Bishop will show up next because Haley Steinfeld's performance was absolutely delightful. Valkyrie had a bit of a rough start in her MCU debut, seeming to be nothing more than a drunk who didn't want to make any waves or cause any trouble, but by the end of Endgame, Valkyrie would be the queen of the Asgardian people instead of Thor. That's a crazy arc, one of the biggest changes out of any sidekick we've seen so far in the MCU. And the more we learned about Valkyrie, the more interesting her backstory became. Finding out her past and her history with Hela was one of the most strikingly beautiful segments in the entire movie, and seeing her team up with Thor to save the day at the end of the film was epic. So if we're talking about strength levels, not only does Valkyrie have Asgardian level strength, she also has a flying horse, which should not be discounted, and she has the full force of the Asgardians behind her as their leader. Yeah, we're getting to the point on this list where all these sidekicks have upgraded to main heroes recently, and Valkyrie's arc has been one of the best. Shuri has proven to be arguably the best man in the chair in the MCU. She's responsible for almost everything T'Challa has, and her advancements in science and technology have only worked to further make Wakanda one of the most impressive nations in the world. Like, sure, they have all the vibranium at their disposal, but they would need a brilliant mind in order to actually do something with it. And she's only a teenager. She redesigned Black Panther's suit so that it's less bulky and awkward. She came up with that basically magic hijack a vehicle from anywhere technology, and she chastised Bruce Banner for designing Vision in a certain way when her way was obviously superior. Already, she's probably the strongest sidekick in the MCU, but by all accounts, it looks like she'll step into the spotlight even more. Black Panther 2 is still a relative mystery, but it seems Shuri is going to become the new Black Panther. If that's the case, then she'll become the brains and the brawn behind Wakanda, which is kind of insane to think about. Falcon probably would have been lower on this list if it wasn't for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show. I mean, I've always liked Falcon. He's been a perfect sidekick for Steve. As he said, he does what Captain America does, only slower. But I'll admit, I was one of those who was hesitant when Cap gave the shield to Falcon and not Bucky. I just didn't know how Falcon could be Captain America when he wasn't a super soldier. I kinda thought that was a big requirement. But then Sam totally changed my mind. He showed just how much he could evolve from just a normal sidekick with a sick pair of wings to the brand new Captain America. He's inspiring. He's what the shield needs. He may not be a super soldier, and his costume probably could use a helmet to protect his fleshy brain, but he's still one of the strongest former sidekicks turned main heroes in the MCU. Of course, it will probably irk Sam, but Bucky Barnes is one spot higher than him on this list. Sorry, Sam, Bucky is just the quintessential sidekick, and his arc is one of the most beautiful things in the MCU. He was a valuable ally to Steve after Steve became Captain America, and Bucky's initial capture is what inspired Steve to go rogue and truly become a hero who fought in the war. Then after Bucky's dive off the cliff, he underwent a horrible transformation that led to the Winter Soldier, and it was only the bond that Steve and Bucky shared that helped to snap him free. He's not only a physically strong sidekick, but he's also one of the driving forces behind everything Steve Rogers did in the MCU. That's pretty cool. Wong is the new Sorcerer Supreme. Good for Wong. I don't know what that exactly means for Wong in the multiverse of madness, since it feels like only a matter of time before Doctor Strange gets the title back, but I'm going to push that dark thought out of my head for now and just focus on how great Wong is as a sidekick. Wong seems to have so many jobs right now in the MCU. He's handling the research for the 10 rings and trying to find out where they come from. He's seemingly working with the government and Abomination in a potential Thunderbolts team, and he's constantly responsible for keeping Strange in check, which, as evidenced, is extremely hard to do. That's a lot for one man. And side note, Wong looks to be the one who was directly responsible for all the portals and gathering of heroes into Endgame, so without him, we'd have never have had that final Thanos battle. Go Wong! Yes, I'm putting Yelena at the top of this list. Why? Because I'm afraid of what she'd do to me if I didn't. I mean, she looks nice and will do things like break into your apartment and make macaroni and cheese, but then she could turn around and eliminate you with one of the cajillion weapons she has hidden all over her multi-pocketed outfit. But seriously, I'm choosing Yelena as the strongest sidekick because of what she does for the MCU. She was introduced in Phase 4 as Natasha's movie sidekick, and she immediately stole every scene she was in. Then in Hawkeye, she also stole every scene while becoming best friends with Kate Bishop. Yelena represents the very best of what Phase 4 has been so far, and being the greatest side character in this next chapter of the MCU bodes well for the franchise's future. She's also the only character introduced so far in Phase 4 that I immediately want to see in every upcoming project. Let her team up with Doctor Strange and travel the multiverse. Let her join Thor in space as he fights Gore the God Butcher. Let her have a street-level adventure with Spider-Man. Let her hop over to the Sonyverse and punch Morbius in the face. Just put her in everything, please. Do you think Marvel's sidekicks are better than DC sidekicks? Like, do you think Bucky Barnes, Falcon, War Machine, and Shuri would destroy Nightwing, Batgirl, Aqualad, Speedy, and Kid Flash? I don't know, it feels like a close match, but overall, I think that would be a fun fight, don't you?